We're live. Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Storyteller's Corner. I'm your host, Joshua T. Calkins-Treworgy, also known as Baron Sidious. This is Break Time Story Time, the 21st installment of Break Time Story Time. And tonight I'm going to be using this break time to return to the presentation of A Midwestern Yankee in King Ovin's Court, a fantasy novel written and presented by yours truly. I am not 100% certain that I'll be doing the break time story times tomorrow and Sunday. Tomorrow, I absolutely will not be, actually, now that I think about it, because I've got tomorrow off. I'm not working tomorrow. I took a personal day in order to make sure everything goes well and is properly tended to for my daughter's 12th birthday party. It's actually her 12th birthday tomorrow. Kind of throws me for a little bit of a loop. I'm getting older. There's no stopping that. Time's arrow neither stands still nor reverses. It only marches forward. Time's Arrow, by the way, interesting novel. I would recommend giving it a read as long as you've got a strong stomach. I've actually did a review for that book just last year. I think you can find the video for that review on Rumble. You may have to look on my BitChute channel. I can't remember if I also uploaded that to Rumble. I'll have to double check at a later time. Anyhow, I'm going off on a tangent. Sorry about that. What do we have here? Oh, okay. Constantly with the notifications. Turn this down. Give me one moment. Sorry about that. Just wanted to confirm with the supervisor that I am on break now. So, I'm going to grab the Kindle, get this booted up, back to where we last left off. And so, let us now proceed back to A Midwestern Yankee in King Ovin's Court, Chapter 11, The Gadling Goblin. I'm going to scooch this a little closer. I know who wants to see this mug, but hey, I'm wondering if one of these days I should just put a picture up and then just have my voice on in the background. Be a little less, I don't know. I tend to be a wee bit self-conscious about being on camera myself. That's why for the longest time, I much preferred doing standalone uploads of video material because I would just record my voice and layer over a still photo on top of it for the visual component. Got a face for radio, folks. So, anyway, let's get into it. The balmy air of summer warmed his toughened skin, the singular shaft of sunlight piercing the shield of his eyelid like it wasn't even there. He groaned, rolled to his left, and promptly fell like a stone to the floor, trapped in sheets he had contorted himself into while sleeping. Flailing about like a man having a fit, the old goblin finally succeeded in tearing free of the bothersome things, tossing them roughly back up onto the bed. "Useless things in this heat, any row," he said to the room. Smacking his lips, the hook-nosed man stood up, pressing his hands into his lower back and arching until two bones popped in rapid succession. Tension eased in his body, a sigh of relief purring out of his throat. Oh, much better. Aye, much better indeed. The Gatling goblin had reached late middle age, with about as much enthusiasm and grace as a man might have when being told that he has a prostate exam at the end of his physical. No thanks, Doc. Just want the balls cupped and coughed. No need to go spelunking in my ass. He ached in places that, only 20 years earlier, would only get sore or creaky after hours of hard work. Oof, that were 2 clan wars ago, he muttered, shaking his head. A scratching at his bedroom door told him that Rufus, his American bulldog, as they were called on the mortal side, needed to go out. Hold on, you knucklehead, hold on, he called. A low, long oak dresser against one wall played host to a myriad of bottles, and he snatched one with a greenish-yellow fluid. He uncorked it, took a sip, and sighed. His stiffness evaporated almost immediately. Into the main room of his cottage he strode, Rufus chuffing at him until he got the front door open. Revered by the whole of the goblin race, the Gatling goblin usually had a retinue of 6 guards routinely patrolling his woods, keeping an eye out for intruders and visitors both. All were welcomed with the same set of sword tips aimed at their chests, though the friendly ones usually had nothing to fear. The Gatling used earthen magic to get a feel for the people coming to him, and his men knew what to look for. If any nearby tree branches swung up rapidly, the guest was okay. If they swung down, they were routed or worse. One, after all, could not be too careful. Rufus sprinted to the fence around his yard, lifting one leg and doing his business. Strange, the Gatling said. There's usually one fellow left behind right here. He looked out into the woods, but as with any such morning, all things seemed quiet. Rufus came back inside, and the Gatling goblin got the dog some food, then began cooking himself some eggs on the fire pit in his kitchen area. A bottle of Graf, strong apple beer, stood half-emptied on the counter. Goblins made the best Graf in Aether Realm, and none could compete with his. The kick on it was hellacious, though. Once a bottle was opened, it had to be drunk within 10 hours for the best taste and effect. From then, it tended to sour until it was almost undrinkable. He had plowed through 2.5 bottles of it the previous evening in a sort of half-assed congratulations to himself for keeping the Hurik clan goblins from going to war with the Patinga clan the month before. As he settled in at his smooth-topped dining area table, the Gatling goblin felt a faint twinge in his left foot. Right away, he was back up and scurrying to the rear of the main room, hands flying to the heavy 3-shelf bookcase that he'd brought from Keralas some 200 years earlier. From the middle shelf, his right hand snatched down a dark silver scimitar, and his left hand brought down a solid bronze rod with meticulous scrollwork along its surface, capped on each end of its 14-inch shaft with a plug of platinum. The Gatling goblin had months earlier suffered a bad scare with one of his guards, when the man had been mauled by wild rendermen in the woods. The living metal creatures had become bold of late, and they had fell upon him as he patrolled the eastern border of the woods, beating him nearly to death before stealing all of his metal. In order to better protect his guards, the Gatling goblin had enchanted each of their boots with a warning tremor spell. If any of them came under attack, the Gatling's left foot would twitch just the way it had, even if the attack came from the otherworldly rendermen, which had come to Aether Realm from someplace unknown. Too bloody early for this nonsense, he grumbled, shaking himself into his banded chain jacket hung by the door. His left foot twitched again, then a third time as he buckled the jacket closed. His heart lurched. Whatever the trouble was, there was either a lot of it or one large bit of trouble. All hells! Rufus! The dog had been standing at the ready by the door. Bed! Hide! The Gatling commanded, and the bulldog nipped off into his bedroom to hide under the bed, as it had been trained to do. The Gatling goblin, sword in one hand, blasting rod in the other, went out to face his latest foe. During the midday meal on their first day after crossing the river, Kathy spotted what looked like some sort of deer with yellow fur, small black rings dotting their pelts. She pointed it out as she chewed on an apple slice. "Daguerreau, what's that?" The Kenyan followed the line of her finger, finally arriving at the yellow deer. "Ah, Asval," he replied without much interest. "A cousin species to deer, common enough in this region. Not much good for hunting if it's meat that you're after. They're much too gamey, bitter." He took a swig of water from his canteen. "Anyhow, they're the only kind of animal flesh the rendermen will eat, and they've been more active than usual in this part of the kingdom. Nobody's entirely sure why." "The Kontapa are much the same in the spirit plane right now," said Dimanche. "It's almost as if something had made them all stand up and take notice at the same time. I wonder if it's anything that we can pinpoint, or if it's part of their natural cycle." "Either way, I'm concerned," said Daguerreau. "The Gatling Goblin has guards at all times, but usually only half a dozen men, and they attempt to patrol the entirety of his woods. As for the Gatling himself, well, he's not as spry as he used to be. If a large pack of rendermen were to turn on him, he would not likely survive." The trio, spurred on by the Kenyan knight's ominous words, rushed through its meal and started out again. They had no time to waste. The following afternoon, whilst doing her necessary behind a set of pink berry bushes, Kathy saw a flicker of movement through the tall grass off to the east of their position on the road. It was at least 100 yards away, but it was furtive, swift, and secretive. She quickly finished up and jogged back to the Fey and Voodoo Spirit. "Something out there, coming our way," she said, in the unlikely event that either Daguerreau or Dimanche didn't already know it. "Copper Renderman," Daguerreau declared after a few sniffs of the air. "They're weak, but fast and wild. Be ready." He popped the tie-downs on Boone and Bain. After 5 minutes of walking, Kathy heard the crush of tall grass being charged through, and in the next moment the angular, primitive creature came screeching at them like a warhawk. The render man looked like an odd copper-colored enemy creature from an old PlayStation 1 game, all sharp polygons and triangles. At first, she thought its head was a perfect diamond-shaped obelisk, but it pivoted its head to one side and shrieked, shattering that illusion. This is just one kind of specter. The scorpions are another. How many more such things will I see before I'm through here? Kathy wondered. Hold on, folks. Yep, thought so. Someone was trying to call me, but it's like, I'm on break. And thankfully, Supply was able to tell them, hey, he's on break. He's not answering his radio. Sorry about the interruption, folks. Kathy brought her axe out, but without need. As the creature reached 10 yards distance to her, a curling whip of lime green energy wrapped around its lower legs, tumbling it to the ground. Baron Dimanche stood with one hand stretched out towards the spectre, the energy whip centered in his palm. He swiftly wrapped it around his hand twice, then grunted as he heaved the living metal creature up and overhead in an arc, slamming it back into the ground. Kathy heard the renderman gasp as the air was knocked out of it. Dimanche did this 4 more times, until the renderman went limp. He retracted the whip and said, "It is unconscious. We should just kill it, just to be sure. Nay, said Daguerreau, sheathing boon and bane. He knelt by the limp spectre, rolling it onto its back and probing its surface with his furry hands. Kathy saw his left forefinger pressed in on a small spot along its torso. Daguerreau made a knuckle and pressed down once, sharp and hard. The Renderman twitched and fell limp again. Every Renderman spectre I've come across has a singular soft spot which, if hit hard enough, paralyzes them for about 12 hours. We don't know what other function this spot serves, he said. This one won't bother us again in any event. And thus they carried onward. For Rufus, like any dog, life was relatively simple. Wake up, run around the house, get Master to open the door, since Master didn't want him to pee on the floor or make grunties on there either. Go do your business in the yard, get fed, get Master to play for short bursts, eat again, go do your business again by the moonlight, sleep. There wasn't much in the way of tricks repertoire, but one thing that he knew that all dogs knew. When Master is hurt, you try to help. Master had come stumbling back into the home many, many ticks of the clock after Rufus had dutifully hid under the bed. Rufus heard Master grumbling, then a heavy thud. Whatever it was, Rufus wanted to see. He crept out from under his hiding place and edged to the bedroom door, poking his head out. Contrary to human understanding, Rufus could see in full color, as could most dogs in Aether Realm. They also see scent vapors, and Rufus recognized the red, pungent stuff covering Master's face, hands, and chest as he lay unconscious on the floor. Blood. But Master wasn't dead, because Master's chest still hissed and wheezed with shallow breaths. His Bernie stick, which he never threw for Rufus at playtime since it was special, lay charred in his hand, radiating a kind of sick heat like fever. Rufus yipped and yapped at Master, but the Gatling Goblin gave no sign of being able to wake up. Rufus padded over to his ankle, grabbing Master's boot by the teeth. It tasted foul, like mud and dust and moss, but Rufus had tasted worse. Whenever Master made squash pie, he offered a piece to Rufus, who politely refused by turning away and farting at him. With all of his doggy might, Rufus tried to drag Master away from the front door. He growled and chuffed, making 3 inches of progress when other sounds and scents interrupted him. They were coming from outside, perhaps 50 yards from the house. With renewed vigor, he dragged Master out of the doorway and pushed the door shut with his head. Through the open window over the sink, Rufus could hear someone big and mean-sounding grumbling at someone else to get their kit shovel and start digging. "I want that fragment now! If any rangers come snooping around and they find his body, they'll kill us on sight. Move!" Rufus, terrified of that voice, piddled on the kitchen floor, trembling. Untold ticks of the clock went by, until finally the mean voice and his friends shouted with glee, then began fading away from earshot and nose shot. Rufus resumed dragging Master, aiming for the bedroom. It took the better part of an hour to make it, and when he was there, the dog leaped up onto the bed, eyeballing the various vials and tubes on Master's clothing keep. Rufus had seen Master cut himself while chopping food for cooking, and whenever he did, he took a small swig out of one of these bottles. Which one, though? Rufus broke one of Master's rules then, jumping from the bed to the clothing keep top. Here was the vial Master used to fix his ouchies. Rufus delicately took it between his teeth, jumping down next to Master. Thankfully, Master wasn't very heavy, so it only took a few minutes to pushing to roll him over and wedge the vial under his chin, popping the cork. Rufus carefully turned the vial to the side, so that Master would have the healing drink go down his throat. The Gatling Goblin reflex swallowed, then came just awake enough to drink the rest of the healing potion under his own power. He tossed the vial aside and embraced his dog fiercely, minding not at all the slobbering licks that Rufus blessed him with as he sat up, sobbing. And that's where we will cut off for tonight. And Sunday, when I return to work and to break time, story time, I will deliver for you, good folks, the remainder of Chapter 10, introducing the Gatling Goblin. And yeah, that's actually a pretty good spot because I'm just scrolling ahead, and this is about halfway through the chapter. So I just happened to chance out on that. It's been so long since I wrote this story that I don't properly remember until I'm going through the reading about where I'm at. It also does not help that I've written quite a lot over the course of my time. When I look back at my back catalog of produced works over the years, there were the two Freedom or the Fire novels, which introduced the fifth age of Temelaria. Then A Hunter and His Prey. Then The Glove of Shadows. Then Lizard at Arms and more. And then The Elf Queen Bounty, all fifth age Temelarian tales. Then Motor City Shambler, The First Diary of Bob the Zombie. Forward Shamble, The Last Will and Testament of Bob the Zombie. Then the Roads Through Amelia collection. Then A Midwestern Yankee. Then The Chained One. Then Strange Camp Fellows. Kingdom No More. Empty Prayer. In Amelia We Do Not Trust. The Stranger Ones from Out There, although I discontinued and broke that collection apart back into separate short stories. A Prison by Any Other Name, Righteous Tyrant, Working the Program, The Big Tour. This is just to name a few. And then Strange Bedfellows, From Home to Home, and Family Lives, which are all fourth age Temelarian tales. I've been at this a while, and some things tend to get jumbled up now and again. Oh, and then there was Not So Epic. I forgot about that one. Also a fourth age Temelarian tale. There was Ganges, which I wrote specifically and exclusively to Substack. Fire Drill, which was a non-genre fiction story. One of the very few first-person perspective stories I've ever written. That actually, the audio presentation of that is here on the Rumble channel. You can go back and listen to that story in its entirety, or read it on the Substack that I've got. I've been telling stories for a long time, and I have told quite a lot of them. And I still have plenty more left in me that I'd like to get around to telling. And I'm going to be beginning to tell one of those stories with the folks at Montauk Publishing. They also own or operate a Substack of their own, Montauk Publishing. And I have been signed on as a contributor there. And I will be serially producing a new novel. I say new, although it's not new to me. I had begun writing it, drafting it years ago in partnership with another YouTuber who I had been sort of friends with because we were both artistically inclined, him in visual artistry, myself in written word. But we were both really big into sci-fi and fantasy. We traveled with a lot of the same sort of friends online. discussing Erickson and Tolkien and Pratchett and what have you. Had a lot of great discussions. And we talked about Wayne Barlow, his kind of darker fantasy novels. And I had pitched him the idea of, hey, you're a great visual artist. Would you ever want to work with me sometime on maybe creating an animated series or something, of shorts on YouTube? I just said it as kind of a laugh. And he's like, no, dude, we should do that. I was psyched and put together a brand new story concept and project, but health problems interceded in a most severe and unfortunate way on him, and the project died on the vine. Sort of. Because I ended up continuing to write that story. Because what he had wanted me to do, what we had agreed upon, was I was going to write that story as straight prose fiction, and he was going to adapt it for animation. But that just never came to be. But I had still written the first rough draft of that story. And a couple of years ago, I came across that file when I was transferring stuff from my old laptop to the one I currently work on predominantly. And I decided, I'm going to give this thing a look over, see if it's still any decent. And I had a lot of, edits to make and corrections and holes to fill in terms of gaps. But I have gone through and tightened it up. And I've got a little bit of editing to do near the back tail end of the story, but I can begin presenting it through Montag Publishing on Substack. The story is entitled Five and Dime. And I think I will leave it at that for now. I'll probably try to figure out a way to get them to agree to let me do kind of a promo, like a teaser read of a very little bit of the story on the break time, story time, just to kind of whet your whistle, kind of a trailer presentation, as it were. So that if you are interested in the story, you can then hop on over to the Substack at Montag Publishing to follow the story as it's released. But that's going to do it for me for now, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you for tuning in. If you tuned in later on after the stream is archived, I still thank you for your time and your attention, and for deciding to spend some of your precious time here with me, here in the Storyteller's Corner. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I ask that you take care of yourselves, and as always, keep reading.